reserves, special drawing rights, SDRs. So when we come back, Ron Paul's warning of it, of how they're going to stage the collapse, then bring in martial law as the solution. We're going to break that down, play a clip from a talk Ron Paul gave. Then we're going to get Max Keiser on about this and a lot more. Stay with us. The worst drought in 50 years. All right, Alex Jones here. We are back live on this Sunday broadcast. Well, a lot of people are really excited because mainline neocon radio told them that Paul Ryan is so conservative that George Washington basically worships him from the grave. The problem is his record, not his rhetoric, but his record. He supported No Child Left Behind, the federal takeover of education, the prescription drug benefit known as the largest expansion of welfare states since Lyndon Johnson's Transportation Security Administration. He helped set that up as well, the TSA, to grope everybody that harasses all the travelers and gropes your family. He supported the Patriot Act, giving government enhanced powers for warrantless snooping, the Troubled Asset Relief Program that bailed out the too big to fail, trillions of dollars of your money to the foreign banks. He supported bailing out General Motors and using your tax money to ship it to China, and the National Defense Authorization Act, the secret arrest and killing of U.S. citizens. In short, he is a typical Bush-era Republican. That's what Jack Kinney, the New American Magazine, wrote. We've got a story up at Infowars.com, and I agree with those statements. Paul Ryan's Tea Party problem, voted for bailouts before he was against it. Yes. And again, people say, well, then what are you going to do? Vote for Obama? No. I'm just saying, let's get honest here. The global offshore banks that are financing Mitt Romney and financing Obama get what they want. And these guys are puppets at the end of the day. Sure, with Obama, you get some really nasty anti-Second Amendment Chicago crime syndicate people who are really dangerous. But Mitt Romney has supported banning semi-autos before, and you notice we've seen Fox News promoting banning the owning of semi-autos. We've seen Bill Kristol, we've seen Rupert Murdoch, we've seen Bill O'Reilly, we've seen Michael Savage come out and say, you know what, ban semi-autos. And if that doesn't concern so-called conservatives, you know, I'm just a constitutionalist. Thomas Jefferson was called a classical liberal. Well, you know what, I like Thomas Jefferson. I've read his writings. I like what he had to say. You want to call me right-winger, left-winger, whatever. I want freedom, okay? And when foreign banks in hundreds of publications, we wrote an article a few weeks ago titled, Banks Declare They've Conquered the U.S. and Europe. And it has all the video clips of the head of the EU and the head of Goldman Sachs and CNBC and The Economist magazine bragging that they've conquered us. And that they're going to use the crisis, got Herman von Rompuy, at that time head of the EU, now he's head of the council, saying we're going to use this crisis to bring in the world government, and we're going to use the crisis to take over. In fact, I've got articles here today where the Federal Reserve Chief was on national news, Friday? And then again this morning, Bernanke of the private Federal Reserve saying, Europe needs more centralization and more power and more taxes. And then lectures the people, says they're lazy. Folks, the Europeans aren't lazy. I mean, what, are Americans working 3 jobs on average apiece lazy too? No. Most of the money doesn't even go to welfare. It goes to these cronies. And the Fed chief is talking about all this dictatorial control they want. There's 2 articles up at drudgereport.com. These are also at Infowars.com. Right there in the middle column, they've moved down from the top. One of them is something we reported on a week ago, but it's finally getting out there, and that's good news. The Civil War of 2016. U.S. military officers are told to plan to fight Americans in a, quote, Tea Party insurrection. And it just goes on to talk about how they believe the main threat is going to be the Tea Party and linking up with Al-Qaeda. And you're like, that's ridiculous. The Tea Party is so Islamophobic. If they see a Sikh in a who isn't even Muslim, people start wanting to attack like piranhas. But whatever, you heard it, Tea Party, you are with Al-Qaeda. Of course, I told you the internal documents already said that. You've heard that here about 5,000 times, probably. No exaggeration. I say it every day in the last 4 years since we got secret documents 3.5 years ago saying returning veterans, gun owners, libertarians, literally in the Army drills, the bad guys wear overalls or coveralls and John Deere hats. We even have footage of it in my films where they, films like Police State 4, The Rise of FEMA, my 4th police state film. And the guys they fight are wearing farmer outfits. Okay, the military doesn't train to fight Al-Qaeda. Our military trains Al-Qaeda. They used them against the Russians, the Serbs in the mid-90s, and then they used them against Libya and now Syria. And the CFR came out last week and said, quote, we need Al-Qaeda. I have links to that in articles right now saying how good they are. So see, Al-Qaeda is now good. The TSA needs to go down your pants to check and see if and you know, check and see if Hank Williams is hiding under there, because that's basically who they don't like. So here it is, and it's the Washington Times, and they have links to there's a whole bunch of military reports, and then Drudge also links to our report by Suzanne Posel. U.S. Army Tactical Manual describes how to control domestic insurrection. That's another one. How to put you in a re-education camp. Oh, yeah, it's public. They don't even hide that. The FEMA camps that don't exist, Glenn Beck said so. So I thought you might want to just check those two out, because here's the issue. I'm going to say this very, very slowly because we have new listeners. In fact, we're going to go to Ron Paul before we go to Keiser, because I'm going to have him on in the next hour. We're going to come back and play a clip from Ron Paul and then go to Max Keiser. But I want to say right now, foreign mega banks are bragging. Can we cue that clip up from CNBC that I've played 20 times? They're bragging everywhere that they've conquered America. And to make sure they fully bankrupt us under their control, they have been training the military to take our guns and put us in labor camps and collapse society. And Ron Paul's talking about this. And they're going to use the giant welfare hordes as the weapon to make us beg for it. So here is a clip of them bragging that we're under global government run by international bankers. Here it is.
So mostly what they do is hold summits.
I think that right now the question is, do we all work for central bankers? That's what I want to address to our guest tonight. Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge? Jim Urio, you say we've got some downside here, a correction in the markets. Fine. But aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do? Aren't we all just counting on the fact that there's a Bernanke put and that we won't go any lower than, say, 5% down from here?
Of course we are, because if we look at the economic data, there's nothing to get excited about in that.
All right.
So yes. Let's
just stop right there. And they go on with all four guests admitting we're under global government and slave to bankers. But in our article, bankers declare they've conquered the U.S. and Europe. We've got clips of them saying they've conquered us and laughing about it, because they know you're watching the Olympics. They know you're watching Dancing with the Stars. They know you're watching America's Got Talent. They know you're watching, paint dry. Okay, I'm not saying you're bad that you are. But the point is, these criminals that make Bernie Madoff look like an angel are in control right now. My friends, the United States and the rest of the world is being mopped up. We've already been captured to a great extent. But we're going into draconian, authoritarian oppression, because the ruling class, that happens to be private central bankers, they hired the ADL and Southern Poverty Law Center the last 50 years to demonize anybody that pointed that out, including congressmen. They had people arrested in Europe that point that out. They have now openly themselves bragged, we have captured you through fraud. Now we're going to take over what's left. Now we're going to shut down your cities via Agenda 21 and carbon taxes. Ha, ha, ha. And now my military sources, but also in mainstream news, and my police sources are saying October, late October, early November, total collapse. Chicago Tribune saying that the federal government's getting the big 6 mega banks, 5 of them U.S., ready during a collapse to not have federal help. Just really incredible information. I have a video showing all these articles up at Infowars.com titled, U.S. Banks Told to Prepare for Total Collapse. That's up there, red linked at Infowars.com under it. I'm driving into work Friday and see a drone over 290. I got footage of it, got out, found the operator. It was TxDOT. You want to see that footage, it's up at Infowars.com. So these are proliferating so much now that I can't even drive to work. Of course, past that was a checkpoint on the road, too, for trucks, but it blocks the road. Just such a free country. So we're going to be going over all of that right before Max Keiser leaves us. Now, it's close to midnight over there in Europe on the continent where he joins us from. We're going to be going to him here in just a second to go over this. But here's the $64 million statement. If we do not identify the globalists as the culprits of this, they're going to continue the collapse because it's designed, they brag it is, to consolidate power as they pose as the saviors. So they're always busy telling you you're not in a recession or depression, but give us more power or you will be, as they walk us in to this system that they've bragged they're establishing. We'll talk to Max Keiser for the balance of this hour and as much of the next hour as he can do as we take phone calls in the next hour. But first, here's Ron Paul, just an excerpt. The full speech is up at Infowars.com. Ron Paul warns Americans of coming economic collapse, and he's getting into point 3 here. The dollar is inevitable to fail. Will other currencies fail first and then they're all tied to it, or will it fail first? Here is a few minutes of that, then we'll go to Max Keiser of MaxKeiser.com. Here it is.
It's impossible to predict the time when confidence will be lost, but it can come quickly. Resorting to buying other paper currencies will not be of much help. When the dollar crashes, most likely the purchasing power of all currencies, since all currencies hold dollars as a reserve, will go down as well. This means that dollars and other currencies will go into buying consumer items, precious metals, and other physical properties. Consumer prices will soar, as well as interest rates. The central bank will lose control, and the more they inflate, the worse the confidence becomes. The interest rates will respond to these efforts by rising sharply. If the Fed tries to reverse the run on the dollar, interest rates will also soar, and the pain on the American citizens will be of such proportion that political chaos will result. Either scenario leads to political and social chaos, the third event, and the most dangerous. With no ability of the federal government to fund its commitments, international or domestic, major changes will occur in our system. The social unrest will elicit cries for government to exert unusual force to head off a complete breakdown of law and order. The ultimate trap will be set for a system of government claiming to protect a free society. If more power and police authority are not given to the federal government, it will be argued that only anarchy will result. If more government policing power is given, it will mean a lethal threat to civil liberties. Already, we have permitted the notion that a single person, the Attorney General or the President, can decide who is an enemy combatant, thus denying that individual the right of habeas corpus, permitting indefinite detentions without charges made. This attitude towards civil liberties has changed significantly since the fear built around 9/11. Yes, I know, declaring one an enemy combatant is reserved only for the radical Muslims engaged in terrorism against the United States. To be reassured by this reasoning is quite dangerous and naive. Logic should not lead us to equate suspects with terrorists and include American citizens, and yet this has already been set by precedent. Under difficult circumstances, our political leaders will not be hesitant to use these powers to maintain order. Tragically, the people may even demand it. We are rapidly moving toward a dangerous time in our history. Society as we know it is vulnerable to political and social unrest. This impending crisis comes as a consequence of our flawed foreign and domestic economic policies, a silly notion about money, ignorance about central banking, and ignoring the onerous power and mischief of out-of-control intelligence agencies. Our